Hey everyone, and welcome to the Love Like Crazy podcast. We're your hosts, Jay and Stacey Coleman, and we are so glad that you've joined us today. I just want to give a shout out to all of our listeners. Thank you for subscribing, following, commenting, giving us your feedback. We truly appreciate it. So we're here today with a very special guest. Jay and I are going to be talking to Dan Ohlerking. He is the Executive Director of Children's Cup, a missions organization that we have had the privilege of partnering with for many, many years. And he's also works with the ARC, the Association of Related Churches, and I believe that he is a true friend to so many pastors. So Jay, let's start off with talking to Dan about all the things with children.
Well, Dan, it's great to have you with us today. Thank you for being here. We've been friends for a long time. We knew each other. We were acquaintances before we started working with Children's Cup, just based off of, working within the church world. Mm-hmm. Years ago, you were with a large church healing place here in Baton Rouge as well. And but your family has been involved. You founded Children's Cup many, many years ago. Your mom and dad did. Mm-hmm. So great to have you with us today. And what's really cool is to be able to sit and visit with friends as we do this. Yeah. It's one thing to have a guest in if you're not really familiar with each other, but to be able to sit with a friend really means a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And so thank you for being here today. Why don't you do this? Tell us real quick a little bit about where you and your wife, Vicki, where y'all are right now, your kids, your family. Just give us a quick update. What's going on in the world of Ohlerking?
One of the coolest things is being back in Baton Rouge.
We're glad to have you back.
30 years we lived here. My wife was born and raised here. All my kids are born here. My grandson was born here. That's a big reason why we're back.
Oh, absolutely.
But we were in California for 5 years, and before that we're in Birmingham for 5 years. And I didn't realize what the decade away had really, so we moved back mainly because it was, hey, family's here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then when I got here, over this past, been about a year, I've just realized, man, this Baton Rouge is home.
Yeah.
It is.
And I never really thought that when we were gone. We're going back to see some family, but it's not just my family. The people here, this is my people. Everywhere else I've lived, I've never really felt like I'm an insider.
Yeah.
But Baton Rouge,
it's your home turf.
I don't feel like I don't belong somewhere.
Yeah.
I go anywhere in Baton Rouge, feel like I belong.
We were very excited when we heard that y'all were coming back. So
yeah, we were like,
we're glad to have you home.
Back in town. Yay.
It is good to be back.
What's cool about it is, our listeners, they don't understand the closeness. Our church actually is in more of a, we would say a rural community. It's a suburb of Baton Rouge. But your in-laws live across the street from the church.
Well, my wife grew up in literally, you go out of the church driveway across the street, and she's down there about a block and a half is where she grew up. It's where my ministry, my personally leading in ministry happened at their house, leading a small group for the youth group in their house.
Wow.
And so this was our world. Central was our world for so many years. Our dating life was, I proposed to her on Greenville Springs Road, just up the road from the church,
Yeah.
This is our life.
It's holy ground. The whole Greenville Springs is
Central
holy
is
ground.
sacred. Now they've done there's been some growth, and we're a little bit I don't know, it's not what it was, but it is cool. It is to have so much history in a place has not been my life. I was born, my parents, when I was 6, we left for the mission field. And so it's just, I've never lived in a house more than 4 years.
Mm.
Wow.
And only that twice. One of those was Birmingham. So, it's just, 45 places I've lived. So to have a place where I feel like I'm at a place where I feel like this is especially home. Mm-hmm. I've never not felt at home where I live, but now it's every place is home, but this is
really
different.
home.
So what you're telling, because I know you told me earlier, I think you said you're 57.
Yeah.
So at the young age of 57, you and Vicky are finally going to settle down.
Maybe so.
and put some roots down.
Maybe so. We got plans, but yeah, we'll see. We've done it before. Built a house thinking this is where we're going to live.
Yep.
But knowing deep in our hearts, probably not. This one, I don't have that deep in my heart, probably not. I think this Baton Rouge is...
Well, what makes the difference, too, is the grandbabies.
Grandbaby? Man, I'm telling you, that makes we just have one. But yeah, it does make
grandbaby.
Grandbaby, yeah.
Well, but that baby gets all the focus.
Yeah, he does. All the Legos are his. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's amazing.
There is nothing in the world as great as having a grandchild.
Oh, absolutely.
It's your kids are all right. They're cool.
Yeah.
They're good.
But I love my kids.
Babies are great.
Skip the kids if you could. And just go to grandkids. I say that. I don't mean it, but
Well, you like us, you had sons, and it's like raising boys up is a wonderful thing because it's a constant adventure. Always stuff happening. And, there's story after story. We've shared a lot of stories with our listeners, but raising up boys, it's an adventure.
It is. And the thing for me, we got 5 kids. Our first was a daughter. The rest are boys. My daughter is born. She's all girl. She's hippie. She's a girl. She's like, and then JD comes along. Tori's this all girl. JD comes along. He's all boy. I'm like, I get it. They're opposites. Third kid comes along. He's another opposite. Like, how do you? I don't know logically, philosophically how that works, but he is exactly opposite of the other 2. And then the other 2 come along, and it stops being quite so extreme because it's a 5-sided thing. But I don't know how people can be so opposite and be in the same family, and 2 of them are twins. Well,
now how many of them are here in Baton Rouge?
Everybody's in Baton Rouge right now.
Okay.
So Tori and her husband have our grandson. And then JD and his wife, they moved back from California with us.
I thought they were still in California.
They're not decided where they want to end up. But he works for us with Children's Cup. They're here. They're just in that spot of trying to figure out where they want to land. And then Lincoln, Rhodes, and Rhett, the 3 youngest, they're at home with us, which I'm good with that. I like that.
I do like having my kids around.
Yeah.
So 5, a daughter, 4 sons, grandchild. And how long have you and Vicki been married?
This month it will be 35 years.
Wow.
35 years. Okay. We just made 31.
Come on.
So
and just like us, y'all have probably seen the ups and downs, the challenges, the roller coaster of marriage.
Never. It's been perfect. She's always agreed with me.
She's always an angel.
She says, Dan, you're right. You're so right. Every time. No, it is. You see ups and downs, and you see challenges between us, but then you also see challenges you face together. We've got the whole journey we started on in California, finding out she had cancer.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those. What do? You're gonna just cave in and give up? You're not gonna do that. So you muster all your faith and you pull it together. You say, God, you've either got this or you don't. So we're fighting something together. And I'm telling you, I'm not saying thank you, God, for cancer. I'm not there. But there's a lot of good He's done from that journey for us as a family, not just for me and Vicki, but our kids. They were like 12, 13 years old when it happened, and they really had never had to challenge their faith. But this journey with Mom having cancer, they've had to confront it, say, do I believe God or not? And they've all come to that just saying, yeah, this is for me. And I'm like, man, what other situation would we have had to go through to get them to that point? You can't make it happen. And so you just hold on to God through the challenges, whether it's between you in a marriage or whether it's between you together and something else the world brings your way. You just fight. You fight.
Yes.
Well, you probably have witnessed this through that journey. We've talked about this quite a bit, during the podcast, that the faithfulness of God.
Yeah.
And God's always been faithful throughout the entire time that we've been married, dating. He's always been faithful. But I think when you're younger, you don't necessarily recognize it as much. When you get older, you recognize, oh man, that's the Lord. He's taking care of us.
Look what He did.
Yeah, look what He did. He's walking with us through this. He's comforting our hearts and our minds. And so you guys have just witnessed His faithfulness all the way through.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've again, as you get older, you start getting a better perspective on all the events. You look back, you're like, okay, that makes more sense now. But for us, one of them, when we were sitting in the doctor's office in California, he said, yeah, it's cancer. And, then he said a few more things and he stepped out of the room. Vicki and I looked at each other like, she knows me. I should have been in a ball on the floor, just a wreck, because I'm a worrier, straight up. But we sat there, we just said, why are we not freaking out? And it went back to just a short story here. We were in Zimbabwe. I had gone to Zimbabwe with my dad to check on some stuff. A storm had come through and done some damage in one of the spots we were working. So we went to check on it, and we landed in Johannesburg, and my wife had dropped me off at the airport. We landed in Johannesburg, and so I called her because it was going to be about 2 weeks with no real cell contact back then. So I called her and I said, hey, we made it here. Just want to check in with you one more time before we kind of go dark. And she said, yeah, after I dropped you at the airport, I went to the doctor, I had him look at that lump in my neck. I'm like, what lump? She'd never even mentioned it to me. And so I'm like, okay, so my worry is already escalating. Yeah. And she says, yeah, he said he wants to do a biopsy on it in a couple of weeks and make sure it's not cancer. And she dropped the biopsy word and then the cancer word all in one sentence. I'm
level.
like,
and you are
on the floor.
And you're on the other side of the world.
I'm on the other side of the world, about to be gone for 2 weeks.
Oh, goodness.
I just told her, I said, forget it. I'm going back on the plane. I could see it. I'm getting back on that plane and coming home. She's like, you're stupid. Like, we just prayed about this. Should you go on the trip? And God said yes. So, you need to stay. Somehow she talked me into it, but I was like, why are they waiting 2 weeks to do a biopsy? If it could be cancer, you should check it right now. Like, don't, I mean, like, panic. Everything escalated to the worry. But in the back of my mind, I kept hearing God say, just trust me. Trust me. We get in the car, we're driving, and I'm like, God, this is bad. I'm going to lose her. And I'm worrying, wringing my hands. We stopped for the night, and it's a situation where you can't drive at night. So the next day we had a full day's drive. We get 2 hours down the road, and I realize I don't have my ring on my finger. I'm worrying in the car. I'm wringing my hands, and I'm hearing God say, just trust me. But I'm just wringing my hands. I realize my ring's not on my hand. And so I'm like, great. We can't even turn around to go get it. Well, Bino, the guy, our missionary guy that's driving us, he turns around. I'm like, well, great. Now we're going to die on the road because you can't drive at night here. It's too dangerous. So now I've got two worries going. But he drives back. Whole time in my mind, it's just this battle. What am I going to do? I'm going to lose her. This losing my ring is a sign. There's no way they're going to have my ring for me, because it's a $300 service merchandise ring.
Yeah.
That's valuable at that
Service
point.
merchandise.
You know it. You know what it looks like too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've shopped there.
And so we pull up to the place, and this is the short version of the story. We pull up to the place. There's about a 20-year-old young man, weighs about 120 pounds, standing at the gate of this place we stayed, and he's doing this number. And I'm like, I couldn't see what's in his hand, but I get out of the van, and I run up to him. He's like, kind of like standing back because I'm not 120 pounds, And I run up, and he just does this to me, holds my ring out to me, and I was like, the whole time, God saying, trust me, trust me, trust me. I couldn't hear that. I'm just like, she's going to die. He holds my ring out to me. And I took it from him. I said, thank you. I handed him all the money I had, like $100 Zimbabwe, which was like you could buy a tissue with it. But I handed it to him. I wanted to give him a big old hug, but I think I'd have broken him. And so I started to get back in the car, and I had this thought. God, I said, I need to tell this story of this guy to my wife because it's part of this whole journey. And I said, hey, can you tell me your name? He turns around and he smiles real big. He said, my name is Trust. And I was like, whoa, what was your name? Like, say that. He said, he spells it out, Trust, Trust. And he smiles and walks away. I'm like, at that moment, it was like God just saying, trust me, like really, I'm serious. Trust me.
Was he a real guy or was he an angel?
I don't know. I got the ring still though. Like I get that. And from that point on, it did turn. She goes, gets the biopsy. It's not cancer. We're like, woohoo, rah, rah. But then 14 years later, we're in the doctor's office, and it is cancer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that assurance that God had given us, a perspective, the reason I'm saying this whole story is that perspective you get as you see how God works. He deposits something that he draws out later.
Yes.
And that's the joy, I guess, the joy of being old, I guess, is you start to see, that's a deposit. It's gonna matter.
That life experience. Yeah.
Well,
that's amazing.
What's really cool is, we know all throughout Scripture, you see, cast your cares upon the Lord, for he cares for you. Paul writes to the church of Philippi talking about worried. Don't be anxious about things. Mm-hmm. We take those petitions to the Lord in prayer. I love what Ephesians 6 talks about when you've done everything. Talking about spiritual warfare, when you've done everything that you can do. Yeah. What my mind thinks about when you've done it, just stand. Mm-hmm. And what happens in the standing is that you got to trust you. Mm-hmm. I've tried to handle everything in my own way of trying to figure stuff out. But now I just trust you. Yeah. And you learned that lesson, it's what's funny about it. It wasn't just a lesson that you learned, the Holy Spirit working. A guy named Trust.
Yeah.
Taught you something.
Amazing.
I'm like, some mom giving birth is like, I'm going to name that kid Trust. I'm like, thank you. God is so, he's so faithful. Like, even in times you just don't even understand, it's cool. I think in this life, you do get to look back and see some of it. But I think it's not going to be until we get to heaven we actually fully understand some of this, how faithful he was.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like it's just, how do people make it without Jesus? I don't know. I don't get it.
So throughout this journey with her health, you guys have, witnessed time after time how God has been with y'all and guided you through this. And there probably have been a few moments where you've worried about stuff. Oh, yeah. Maybe a few them just, a few, but you see God moving throughout the entire journey.
It's stuff with like going through challenges like Children's Cup. When I stepped in to lead, we were in a crisis as Children's Cup. But that was still an anchor, even though it wasn't specifically my wife's cancer. It was that God's got this or he doesn't. And all throughout his word, he's got it.
Yeah.
He does.
So he's got it. I have to believe that.
I think it's a matter of us getting it that he's got it.
You're right. Do I get it that he's got it? And I think that's when, for me, that was a moment when, okay, I get it. He's got this.
Yeah.
I've just got to stand. I've got to do my job. I've got to do my work. When I've done all to stand, then stand. That's a great verse. I think that's what the story of every challenge in our lives has been since then. It's like, man, I don't know what to do here. I've done everything I know how to do. We've prayed. We're going to keep praying. But man, we just got to believe that God's got it.
Yeah.
You know?
And understand that he's concerned about everything that concerns us, even to the smallest detail that he knows. And he's so faithful to take care of us.
Yeah. We was just in Zimbabwe and there was an orphanage we went to. And I'm like, my heart's broken for these kids. They're like, it was cold and rainy. So it was like if you were doing a movie set to make this place look drab and depressing.
That was it. It was
perfect. But it was actually pretty messed up. And I thought, man, we got to do something here. And I'm like pressing. But then as I'm reminded of what you just said, God cares not just about the things I care about, but he cares more about those kids than I do. He sees them 365 days out of the year, 24 hours a day, he sees them. I had, 2 hours with them. And he sees them and loves them more. So my energy we got to go do it now. I have to trust that his passion for them is greater. If he's saying now's not the right time.
Right. His timing is perfect.
His timing is perfect. I don't understand that. That one gets me sometimes. Like, they got to sleep another night in that cold. I can fix this. I can, but I can't. I can patch it. But he's got a plan that's going to make it all come together where heaven is the ultimate goal.
Well, dude, let's do this. Speaking of, being in an orphanage, taking care of children, why don't you kind of give our listeners, because a lot of people are listening to this and they don't have any idea what Children's Cup does. The name itself, Children's Cup, is powerful because you realize, hey, they deal with children and minister to kiddos, but your mom and dad started this missions organization many, many years ago. So why don't you give our listeners just a quick snapshot of what children, the founding, where y'all are, what is the mission of Children's Cup?
No, so back in 92, mom and dad had just left a role in ministry doing missions work, and they were praying about what to do next, and they felt like God gave them the dream to feed kids and tell them about Jesus, specifically in hard places of the world. And so they mustered all their credit cards together and started doing what they could, and it was Philippines and Vietnam. It was where we had been missionaries in the Philippines growing up, so there were some relationships there that they tapped into. And then Dad had done 2 trips up to Vietnam during the war to try to work with the churches, get them ready for the inevitable collapse of South Vietnam. And so he had some relationships there. So they started doing what they could there. And then in the mid-'90s, when AIDS really started to ravage Southern Africa, there was a relationship Dad had there, and it kind of just took over all the attention. So everything Children's Cup was Southern Africa, because AIDS was knocking it out. I mean, it was 40% in some countries, 40% positive.
Some of the statistics that have been shared with me through the years of the different countries and the AIDS epidemic is just catastrophic in some of those nations. So you guys in Africa, you are working in South Africa, Swaziland.
Yes, and they've changed the name to Eswatini.
Okay.
But yes, Swaziland.
So Swaziland now is
Eswatini.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's still hard for all of us. We're not just to get used to saying the new name, but it's like Louisiana changed the name to, Tigerland.
Yeah,
we'd be all right.
That would be okay. That fits.
We'd probably just call it Crawfish Land.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So, and I've heard you call it, that before, but I didn't realize that they had made that transition.
Yeah,
so,
I didn't either.
Eswatini, South Africa.
And then we had started in Zimbabwe was the first place we started.
Okay.
Right.
And the next place was Mozambique, I think was before we shifted to Eswatini. So Mozambique, the works that we started there have launched and done really well. Healing Place has a campus there. Celebration Church out of Austin, Texas has a campus there. And those works are going great. So we're not functioning as Children's Cup there. We're still registered there, but they're doing well on their own. Zimbabwe got really politically challenging, and we ended up having to shift we could not move food around the country because it would get taken by the road stops with the officials. And so we ended up having to relocate to Eswatini, put our headquarters there, which has been phenomenal because it's a very peaceful country. Was about 1 million people there. I don't know after COVID what the stats are there, but small country, very peaceful. And so we're able to operate there, but do what we do based out of there. So it's been a good combination for us working in Eswatini. Poverty like crazy. South Africa, we're just across the border outside Eswatini in South Africa. So it's still much the same. It's just a different nation, so you have different rules, but the people are very much the same and same kind of situation.
Which some years ago I went to Africa with Children's Cup and got to see some of the work that you guys are doing there. And to be able to interact with the kiddos and play with them, and, it's just beautiful. I mean, those kids just, when you walk through the gates of the care point, they just swarm you.
They're kids.
Yeah.
That's the thing that always hits me is as you start to know the stories behind these little faces, you start thinking, man, there's so much trauma. There's so much, how am I going to, they'll come to the care point not knowing where they're going to eat. This is why they come. This is my one meal. How do I survive? But then they come and they start getting better. We give them hope. It looks like a meal. Mm-hmm. Then they start to dream. We inspire them to dream, and then we teach them, we get them ready to go change the world. That's our giving hope, inspiring dreams, changing worlds. But they're still kids. So when they come, I remember one of the first times we were at one of our care points, kids were playing soccer with this rags that they tied together to make a ball. And they're just playing. And then like a kid would get in and play for about 5 minutes, then go sit on the side and cough up a lung. I mean, just hack and cough. As soon as they got where they weren't coughing anymore, they get right back in the game. Yeah. Like they're so unhealthy, but so determined to have fun and be a kid.
To be kids.
And I'm like, it's just like, I want to go play with all of them. I want to go I love the little ones, pick them up, throw them up in the air. It freaks them out and it's great and it's funny. Then they're a little terrified and then it's funny and they won't let me stop, but then you start thinking about when's the last time an adult male touched them that wasn't fearful. And that's for so many of them, and especially in Eswatini, it's such a rampant problem of sexual abuse, and especially from adult males. Like to represent an adult male that is kind and loving to them, it's weird.
Without ulterior motives.
Without any, just like literally, I just want to let you know you're beautiful.
Yeah, that Jesus loves you.
Yeah, and He sees you. And the people that are working here, they see you, they love you, and I'm,
So basically these care points, and I want you to expand on that a little bit about what a care point is and how it operates. But basically it becomes a safe place for them.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So it's, in American terms, you might think of it like a community center or an after-school center. Sometimes it's before school, but mostly it's after school. The kids will all come. We position them in the community strategically near schools.
Mm-hmm. And you feed them there.
We feed them there. A lot of them, that's their one meal they get for the day. But then we also, like this year, so in the past, the food was the main thing. And then we started doing medical checkups. We started, kids who have HIV, we'll bus them to the clinic to get their medicine, doing other things to help them. Discipleship program is something we started using the One Hope curriculum. And this year, what we're rolling out, just did a training this morning with our team in Africa to roll out a new program that we've put together that is a cohesive, the whole thing, body, mind, spirit. It's how do you eat healthy? How do you identify when there's something unhealthy for yourself in your body? It's in helping them with after school, like getting computer labs in the care points, which sounds weird in such places of such poverty, but it's a huge step forward, and it's very doable. Putting a library in at the care points, teaching kids to read who aren't getting it at school. School systems in most of these countries we're in are falling way short. And so we can come in and if we do our job, then these kids at the care points end up excelling above the kids in the rest of the community. Mm-hmm. So not only do they come in, they're the poor kids, but they come out on top. And that idea of saying, we're going to give you hope, inspire you to dream, and get you set up to go change your world, it's in that community center that it happens. And so it is a safe place where they can come and enjoy life and know that they're loved and they're cared for and seen.
So they get fed, they get educated, in a sense, and they develop these life skills.
Yep.
That is
and
needed.
All of it in a context of discipleship.
Yeah.
So that's the key for us. So
the foundation being Jesus.
The meal is kind of the hook that you use to draw them in so that you can start to disciple them for Christ.
Yep.
And everything is around that, understanding the purpose God has for your life, that he has purpose for your life, developing life skills for whenever you are no longer a child, to where maybe you can utilize those to support your family.
Well, and what we found is a lot of times the employers, we work with employers and do job fairs sometimes. And a lot of times what they'll say is, hey, I keep putting my hand in front of your camera. A lot of times when we're working with employers, they're telling us, hey, don't worry about skills training. We can teach them the skills. What we can't find is kids with character that aren't going to steal from us. They're going to show up to work on time, and they're going to have integrity. So they're telling us, hey, just focus on getting us a generation with integrity. And the skills part we can handle. That's most of that's just easy.
So I saw, whenever I went to Africa, one of the things that I saw was to see some of the success stories. These kids come in, and I mean, there was no hope. And then they find a meal, but they find Jesus. And then from there, as you begin to disciple them, and you see them 2 years, 5 years, however many years later, and where they are, and they're leading and they're discipling, and they're, it's really just wonderful to see that.
One of my favorite, most inspiring things I experienced, we were in Honduras at one of our care points, and we had started this program with just the seniors in high school. Like we were just trying to get that last year, get them ready because they're leaving the program. And now we've expanded that where it's the whole thing, the whole 4 years old to 18 years old, we're doing this program at age appropriate levels. But at that time, it was just the seniors, and there was like 8 of them at the care point. And they'd gone through this 1-year program of prepping them for knowing how to apply for a job, helping them know how to present themselves for an interview, knowing how to present themselves to ask somebody on a date, just being a gentleman, being a lady, just basic skills of being polite, just all that stuff, teaching them that. And at the end of this, and there's a lot of discipleship in there. And at the end of that year, all 8 of those kids had at least one job offer. The ones that wanted to go to university had been accepted to university. Some of them were doing a job and university. And they were all still in their free time coming back to the care point to serve the younger kids. When we showed up, they're serving the meals to the kids, to the younger kids. The younger kids are looking up at them saying, I want to be like them.
Yeah.
And those kids, those 8, 2 of them I know were in gangs, and somebody at the care point, another one of those 8 invited them, said, hey man, why don't you get out of the gang? Because gangs are what the big problem is in Honduras. And all the kids face this kind of choice. Do you want to be a loser, or you want to go with the gang? And so these kids had gone gang because they wanted to belong somewhere. But then a friend invited them to the care point. They felt the safety and love and being seen, and they matter to be a part of that care point. So the U-turn in a kid's life from 15 to 18, it would just being a part of being seen, being needed, being loved.
Yeah. So it's almost like they've been mentored, and then they turn around and come back and help to mentor and be that example.
I remember asking some of the younger kids, we were interviewing these 8, and I remember they left, and there was like a couple of 14-year-olds hanging around. I asked them, what do you think about those kids that just left? They're like, we want to be just like them. And I thought, okay, I got youth pastor in me. I know.
Yeah.
That part of me was like, okay, yeah, that's good. That's what we want.
Well, and what's neat about this, I don't know if this is original with Children's Cup, but y'all say this quite often. Hope's name is Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Didn't your dad?
That was my dad's favorite thing to say. I don't know if he came up with it, but he took credit for it.
Yes.
But I love that, because these kids who have no hope, they meet Jesus and find out what hope really is.
Yeah.
So
you think hope looks like a meal, but there's so much more behind that, because when they find Jesus, I mean, it's just like what you have here in church. When you find somebody comes and they finally get the idea that Jesus loves me and cares about me, and they surrender to that, Hope just bursts forward in their life. Everything was down. Everything was going away. I don't know how I'm going to make it. What's my I don't matter. I'm unseen. I'm a half person. We've heard all those. And when hope settles in, it changes. Like, oh, I matter. I've got to get through this, and God's going to help me get through it. And I've got a purpose. And man, that's exciting to see. Whether it's a kid in Africa or Honduras, or if it's somebody here in Central or Watson or Walker or wherever, it's like it's people discovering hope. That's why we live. That's why you guys wake up in the morning. I know.
Well, and it's what I love about this is your family being involved in this ministry, from your mom and dad founding it. And your dad went home to be with the Lord some years ago. And now here you are leading this organization, and it's grown. I mean, y'all were in Africa, and now you've gone from that to Latin America. I know that we've been partnered with Children's Cup, and I've always said this: we are honored to be able to partner with y'all. And I believe at this point we've topped 20 years. We're 20 plus years now partnering with Children's Cup.
I should have done the math to see how much money you've put into Children's Cup. It's probably scary.
But I remember we were going to build a care point in Zimbabwe, and whenever the political instability, it was kind of like, no, that's not a good move at this point. And y'all actually moved out of the country. But we've had the opportunity to partner with y'all in Belize, and have actually built 2 care points through Children's Cup, and we're getting ready
to go dedicate one.
2 to 3 weeks. We're going to dedicate that care point. And to go there and to serve and see the kiddos being taken care of, and the partnership with local churches. I just love, the mission of Children's Cup. And I know that you guys, with what God has accomplished through everything that y'all have basically just put your hands to do, there's a lot more on the horizon. I know God's got a lot more that he wants to accomplish through.
There is.
But
I believe that. I think one of the things that you just touched on that I think is so important is the connection with church. Like we have a lot of businesses support us. We have a lot of partners that are businesses in the countries we work in the communities, and that's important. But there is a key to this whole thing, that it is a church. Jesus said, I came to build my church. Didn't say I'm going to build my nonprofit. I'm going to build my church. So the nonprofit that we run is there to help build the church. If I ran a business, I'd be like, my business is here to help build the church. That's the purpose for the whole thing. And so I think that connection with the partners in the U.S., like you guys, churches that are deeply engaged and invested in the ministry, but also churches on the ground, those kids need a church to grow up in. They need a life-giving, healthy church to grow up in. So we're committed to all of that dynamic, and I think it's one of the reasons God blesses what we do, is because we're about what he's about.
Right. So it's good for our listeners to understand, like, when you build a care point, you're connecting that with a local church.
Yep.
So we're building that local church to where the people in that church can also benefit and help even serve in the care point.
Yep. And ideally, it's multiple churches in the community. What my ideal situation, we don't have it everywhere. My ideal situation is you have a care point, and there's like 4 or 5 local churches in that community that are all coming together for the sake of the kids in the community.
Yes, teaming together. That's wonderful.
Yep.
So let me ask you this: so our listeners, if they say, "Hey, look, we love the vision," how do we find out about you guys? How do we want to? I love what y'all call it, a friend. You can be a friend to a care point, and through that support financially that care point. How do they find you guys?
So childrenscup.org has got everything there. I mean, obviously, there's more things I wish were on the website, but it is pretty clear how to get in and help there. For an individual, the general way to help is $44 a month is the cost to get one kid through the program every month. So not through the program, but it's the cost of running that program for the kids. Every month it costs us $44. So if people give $44, you're basically scholarshiping a kid to go through the program. And the communication or the relationship the reason we call it friends is because you get access to a community page where the stories of the kids, what's going on in their lives this week, what's going on at the care point this week. They're doing a soccer tournament, or we did Serve Day. The kids at the care point did Serve Day at the care points. They all went out and did Serve Day with serving their community, praying over the sick, praying over the elderly, going to pick up trash. They do that. So you get to see videos and you get to encourage them with that. And you can post your own stuff and be like, hey, we're going through a thing here. Our son's having surgery. Kids, would you pray? Yeah. Man, they'll pray. They'll post that. It's like a private Facebook group. It's not Facebook, It's like a private group, and it's honestly, it's better than writing letters back and forth. I don't write letters anyway, but now it's like it's an ongoing flow of communication where you're engaging with those kids' lives, and then you get to go on a trip and see those kids, and that just escalates everything.
Yeah. And I've had, we've had the opportunity to go on several trips to go to Belize, to Africa, to see everything you're doing.
Well, so you went to Africa. I've been to Belize.
Not yet. Not yet.
I have not.
She's going to come to Africa. So if somebody says, hey, I want to be a friend of Children's Cup, childrenscup.org, how do they connect with you personally? Social media?
So it's best, well, I say best. There's a whole bunch of ways. I'm on social media. I have a unique last name, so I get to be the only Dan Ohlerking anywhere. So any social media that I'm on, it's just Dan Ohlerking. And then my email address is just dan@childrenscup.org. Okay. So either way is good.
Okay. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
You guys are heroes to me. And here's the thing: if you guys never gave another dime to Children's Cup, you're still heroes to me because you're pastors. You obeyed God to do something that's honestly a little crazy to do, but you've done it. You've stuck with it when it was hard. Mm-hmm. You stuck with it when it was great. And I don't know which you feel it is right now, but I mean, you're committed to doing what God's given you to do, and that's been in your parenting, it's been in your ministry, your leadership, and your friendship with me. I value that so much because the input, the advice you give me, it doesn't come from, hey, I know more than you do, even though you do. It doesn't come from I'm cooler, I'm smarter, or I'm whatever. It doesn't come from that. I'm a friend, and I'm going to get in the trenches with you. I always feel like when we have something that's a challenge, whether it involves your church directly or not, when there's a challenge that we have, I feel like, okay, Jay's going to roll up his sleeves and go fight with me. And that's not very common for people to have that kind of friend.
Well, I'll tell you what, we have been honored to
Yeah, we love you.
What's cool about this is partnering with Children's Cup. It's with our friend.
Yes.
And we do ministry together, but it's great to be friends. And we love you guys. We love your family, and are very blessed to just be able to spend time with you and interact with you. And I love this. We can sit here all day long and talk about these things on this podcast. But thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great.
You have anything you want to add?
I just think this is great. And go to childrenscup.org and find out how to be a friend.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. So thank you guys for listening to this episode today. I hope it's been a blessing to your life. It's been wonderful having Dan with us today. And if you are enjoying this podcast, make sure that you like, you subscribe, you share, you leave a review. Let all your friends and everybody know. Help us build this. It's been a great day as we talk about just loving on kiddos and seeing the difference that God is making in their life. And as always, I'm Jay.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is Love Like Crazy.